All right. Well, welcome everyone. We're on the Resilient and Joyful Leader on LinkedIn Live, YouTube, and Facebook. Maybe if it's working, I don't know. Sometimes tech is just not my thing, and that's okay. And I'm super excited to welcome Monique Childress. Oh, I said it wrong again. You're going to help me, Monique, when I get to you. And Bobbie Carlton as my panelists for today's topic of supporting teams through change, balancing empathy, boundaries, and productivity. And just a reminder to everyone, the whole purpose of this quote unquote lunch and learn, because for some of you it is not lunchtime anymore, and it will be lunchtime soon, is that I find that leaders, whether you have ever been a leader before or you are vying for a leadership position, these things just aren't taught. You're kind of like, oh, you're really good at this skill, and let me promote you and make you a manager. And then you're like, I want to go back to having no brain. So, not that you have no brain. I want to really engage you. We have questions. If you can't commit during the call, replay it and make comments, and we'll engage with you later. We probably will not engage with your comments during the live, but hopefully we can receive your comments later and offer you our thoughts. I also want to remind everyone to type your questions or comments in the chat on whatever channel you may be watching, and we'll look forward to engaging with that later. And again, I'm going to remove this background just so we can get everybody up here, and that's too close. I think I'm going to change it to this one. How about that? So again, the topic is supporting teams through change, balancing empathy, boundaries, and productivity. When a speaker is actually speaking, I will put up a QR code, as you can see, oops, on that side of me, my QR code on the top, what would be your watching left-hand side. And when Bobbie is speaking, I will have a QR code for Bobbie. And when Monique is speaking, I'll have one for Monique. I am still getting used to the restream. So when I spotlight someone, it might accidentally spotlight the wrong person. And that's the way it goes. You're more concerned here with the content than you are with my technical abilities. So going back to the questions, before we begin the questions, I would like each of you to come off mute and I'll call you one at a time, introduce your name, where you're located if you'd like, the name of your company. Don't tell anything about your company just yet. That'll be for the end. But tell us why you are passionate or excited about this topic. So, Monique, you've done this before. Let me start with you.
All right. Can you hear me okay? Hi, everyone. My name is Monique Childress. I'm a change and leadership coach based in Atlanta. And why I'm excited about this topic, for the last 12 years or so, I've worked with leadership teams to help them navigate change. And more recently, in the last 5 or 6 years, really working one on one with leaders to talk about their confusion and need of clarity and alignment. So I love this topic. It's rooted in the work that I do, but also my beliefs in what good business looks like.
Wonderful. Thank you, Monique. And Monique has been a guest once already on this platform, so she knows the ropes. And I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. And sometimes I put topics out there for people to choose. And sometimes I know somebody's really good for this topic. So it's going to be exciting to see what 2026 brings us. But this is the last leadership series for 2025. And Bobbie, come on in.
Thanks. Hi there, Bobbie Carlton. And my company is a little bit complicated. So the day job is Carlton PR Marketing. The night job for many years was Innovation Nights. The dream job is Innovation Women. And I bought two more companies during the early days of the pandemic, a research service for professional speakers called My Speaker Leads, and a digital magazine for women entrepreneurs called Lioness. And actually, the reason I am so interested in this topic is not only do I have to manage a whole bunch of teams, but I have to be somebody that people look up to as the editor in chief and publisher of Lioness. So we have a whole readership of women entrepreneurs interested in this topic.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm glad you said all the different companies that you have, because I'm like, I am having a hard time just managing one. I'm ready to hire several people. I need to offer some jobs. It is definitely challenging. And I imagine, you didn't mention this, Bobbie, but I imagine with what you have to scale, that balancing that empathy, boundaries, and productivity is critical so that you don't burn out, but also knowing when your people are looking like they're burning out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I always tell people it's like, do as I say, not as I do. I'm one of those people answering email at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever, but I'm very passionate about protecting the team. And, it's like, nope, it's 5 after 5. You need to leave.
Yeah, and then I'll check the emails because I'm the owner. Yes, I know how you work. All right, very good. So we'll be looking at 2 questions, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them on the screen, but I'm also going to send them in the chat for my panelists in the private chat, so my panelists can have a chance to re-examine them. The first question is, how can leaders lead with empathy during periods of change while still maintaining clear expectations and accountability? And what I want to just say to this is my company is Center for Empathy and Emotional Intelligence, and empathy is what I lead by. Thus, the picture on the other side, the picture of the heart behind me, and really supporting people to gain a better understanding of who they are, but who the people are in front of them. Because the more understanding we have of one another, the easier it is to set and maintain clear expectations and accountability. So let's go ahead and start with Bobbie. Bobbie, come on in. And I'll give you a couple of minutes and let you know when you're done.
Okay. I mean, I think the big thing for me with this question, how can we lead with empathy during periods of change, is to start off acknowledging that this is a time of change. Everybody understands better, or they can handle it better when they understand what's going on, even if we're not in love with the outcome. I have to spend a lot of time listening and listening to the team, but also providing them with direction. Sometimes when there's big change in the air, it's, I think, very hard for people to acknowledge that we're going to have to change because it's going to change what they do every single day. So we have to be very clear with our priorities, and we have to be very clear with what is happening in the moment.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it's interesting. We're not really talking about this, but I'm going to bring it in a little bit. I participate in Friday Speaker Friends, and I'm on other calls with you. And what I like about what you do as a leader, and I think this is usually the characteristics of a leader with empathy, is that you involve everyone around you, but you make the final decision, but you still give us the space, even as clients, to understand, what are you looking for? What are you needing? What seems to be working for you? What isn't working for you? And then within your capacity, you tend to bend and fold a little bit if you're able. But if you're not, you're like, I can't. And I really respect and appreciate that.
Yeah, there's actually a terrific book called The Art of Gathering. And The Art of Gathering talks about generous authority. It's actually comforting to people when you give them clear boundaries, when they have clear expectations, and they know what's going to happen. So being a leader, sometimes it's not exactly what I would call a popularity contest, because you do have to take responsibility for what it is you're telling people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. All right, Monique, come on in. You got an answer to that question?
I do, but first, just ditto to everything that Bobbie just said. If I think about empathy, is very it's a very important trait for leaders. But sometimes I notice, and even with myself, that we think we're being empathetic and we're actually being avoidant. We're focusing on, well, making sure that we understand how everyone is feeling, but not recognizing that in our role as the leader, we have some responsibility to actually show our care through clarity, through talking through what matters now, what doesn't, what our roles are, what the expectations are. And so when it comes to empathy, I want to make sure that we're not over indexing on empathy. I think especially coming out of such a season of, well, it's hard to say coming out of because we can't predict the future, but just thinking about even like the last 5 years, change happens at an individual level, at an organizational level, at a systemic level. And there's a need to want to show your employees and your team that you care. But we just want to make sure that what's not getting lost is the complexities that leaders actually need to navigate and to take on, to remove the ambiguity, and which can create anxiety for the team as well. So it's really, there's a balance that needs to happen between empathy and clarity, or maybe even just seeing empathy as clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't mean to come. I pressed the wrong button, so you still have time.
Okay, I like seeing the
yeah, I appreciate that. And actually, I'm really glad that you brought in this idea of, oh my gosh, did I literally what was the very last sentence you just said?
About the balance between empathy and clarity, and sometimes that them being equal, empathy being clarity.
Thank you. Absolutely. So what I wanted to add to that is, you can't have empathy or clarity if you don't pause. And you said to take the time to, right? And so when you pause, you actually are giving yourself and the people you serve a moment to develop empathy and clarity. But if we're go, 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 do, rush, 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 urgency causes chaos, empathy goes out the window, and clarity is definitely non-existent, because now everybody's very confused. Like, why did you just throw that out the window? Okay, bad joke. Anyway, thank you for that. So usually when I ask a question, I go back to the first person in case something came up that the second person said. So Bobbie, did you want to add anything? You're good? All right. So let's go on to the second question. But let me just remind people who are watching the replay, if you missed the first question, it was, how can leaders lead with empathy during periods of change while still maintaining clear expectations and accountability? I do actually want to say one more thing about that. Empathy is, well, you can't have empathy without emotional intelligence. I say this almost every episode. Emotional intelligence is knowing what you're feeling so that you can navigate when other people are having feelings. Okay. And you can't do that without the pause. So I said that just a moment ago. When you are willing to take the time to take a breath, and I mean a real breath, it doesn't have to be more than 16 seconds. Inhale through the nose, hold, exhale through your mouth, hold. You have just allowed your amygdala to calm down, your nervous system to say, hey, I'm okay, which then gives everybody else the awareness that they are okay, and you're not going to flip your lid. So it's really important, if you want to have empathy, to be willing to pause. Okay, so with that, let's go to question number 2. What practical boundaries help teams stay productive during transition without sacrificing well-being or trust? So let's come in with Monique this time first. Monique, come on in.
This is a good question, and of course it depends on the teams and what the needs are. But if I think about what the leaders can do to kind of set up those practical boundaries, we've already started to talk about really laying out, here's what's, taking that pause to see what is actually happening, what is true and what's not true, and what is expected and not expected during this time of transitions. And so by using the boundaries as definitions for what the current reality is, I think that's one step that leaders can take in terms of the practical boundaries to support the team. Could you bring the question back up? I can't see the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I put it in the chat, but I put it a little late. So yes, what practical boundaries help teams stay productive during transition without sacrificing well-being or trust?
Thank you. So sacrificing well-being, that's the part that I was looking for. I think a second practical boundary is really identifying what is actually urgent. So oftentimes when there's a series of changes that are happening, or even just one significant change, there can be a pressure, whether it's a manufactured pressure or actual pressure, to move quickly and to just do. But I think really for leaders to clearly define what is actually urgent and pressing can allow for the team to then prioritize the tasks that are on their plates so that they're not overworking to just address everything that comes across their desk, and really focus on that the maintenance of the well-being by understanding what the priorities are. But I'm curious what other practical boundaries you all have seen in your work, but I really think that sits with the leader themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's funny, these topics tend to always have some sense of a common thread, right? We're talking about resilient and joyful leaders. And one of the things you just mentioned remind me of the last panel we had, and we discussed something that Brene Brown brings up is the percentages. She's off on this work trip. She's really exhausted. She's coming home. Her husband's been taking the kids, and she's so excited to get home and just rest. And she walks in the door, and the husband hands her the kids. And she's like, no, I'm not ready, right? And so they came up with this system where they tell each other what percentage are they. So she's 70% and he's 90, or she's 60% and he's 40. Well, guess what? She gets the kids, right? So it's identifying that. So when you were just talking, Monique, about, people's ability to identify where they're at, I think that's really important. And I would add just an extra little caveat: without sacrificing well-being and trust, well, how do you know unless you define what your well-being is? What defines well-being for you? What defines trust for you? And so as you navigate your own well-being and trust that you have, then you can decide whether you're jeopardizing it or not, whether you're sacrificing it or not, right? So I really appreciate that you brought that in. My practical tip out there for people is to identify, what percentage are you at? Right? Can you really take on that extra report? And if you say yes, are you going to be able to complete it? Or is there a way to say, I'd really like to do that, and I'm going to need some support? So thank you for that. Bobbie, come on in.
Yeah, I loved hearing the Brene Brown story. It reminds me of when our kids were little, my husband stayed home with the kids. And of course, I always felt he had a rougher row to hoe than I did. I was off in, air conditioned office. He was dealing with the house and the kids and everything else. And so when vacation time rolled around, I was like, here, let me take the kids off your hands. Go. And I'd go back from vacation exhausted. So one of the things that we did, and this is something that could be a corporate suggestion as well, is we looked for some creative solutions where we both got to rest. We found a vacation spot that was a place where we could go as a family, but they had childcare and the kids had clubs. So we both got to do a little bit of resting. Back to the question itself, though, no enough reminiscing. I think one of the biggest things is focus and the ability to look for the highest impact priorities. Whenever you have any type of time where there's transition and change, often the instinct is to do a lot of things where you are probably going to be more effective if you pick one or you pick two and you focus in on them. And if you give those things a clear finish line, like, where are we successful and what does successful look like?
Absolutely. And that makes me remember something I work on with my clients is I want everybody to win a medal. So think about the Olympics, right? So set up your goals, priorities, expectations in bronze, silver, gold. So gold is what we absolutely want to get done. Bronze is what we can get done and still have a pretty good organization or a good, whatever your desk looks like, whatever it is, set up your bronze, silver, gold, and silver is obviously in the middle. And even with your finances, what do you absolutely want to earn? right? And what could you just be living on, but still, not just surviving. And then the silver's in the middle. And so when you think about your tasks, when you think about your well-being, when you think about, the way you want to communicate and be in community with your colleagues or out in the world, what are the things that you absolutely, bottom line, that's the end? No, you can't go below that, or you're not getting a medal, then silver, then gold. And I think that really helps people restore themselves and support themselves in identifying, like you just said, defining success. What does that mean to you? But then you always get a medal. Everybody's happy. And you don't even have to pay for a trainer. Well, you have to pay for us when we're coaching you or whatever else, but it's a lifesaver in my opinion. So Monique, did you want to add anything or bring anything in after hearing that?
Yeah, I really like the gold, silver, bronze. I'm gonna have to use that some form of fashion. But one quick thing to add is that the word trust in that part of the last part of the question around sacrificing trust, and people don't lose trust when leaders say no. I think they lose trust when there's just too much uncertainty, or they feel like the rules are changing, or for the Olympics example, like the goalpost keeps moving, right? So I think having very clear understanding, almost like predictability around this is what success looks like and this is what the priorities are. And so we should expect, one of these options. I think that is a way to avoid sacrificing trust in that. So I just wanted to bring that word back into the conversation as well.
Thank you for doing that. One of the things, yes, I see you, Bobbie. I'll bring you right in. One of those things, the things that you just said is, so I work part-time for a coaching institute, Certified Life Coach Institute, and I love that place. But anyways, we talk to our students who are learning to be coaches about boundaries, and we talk about there's firm, there's rigid, there's flexible, and there's really wobbly, right? And so when your boundaries are firm, fair, and flexible, you actually are going to have the respect that you want. Whereas if you're all over the place or too rigid, right, then you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to have a lot of rebellion. You're going to have a lot of resentment. And those aren't the two good R's. Rebellion and resentment can really cause a workplace full of havoc, right? And so if you want to move from havoc to harmony, you want to make sure that you're easing in and allowing people to be human. My tagline is to help people do peopling better. We have to actually have some form of structure. I had a great teaching career. My students knew that I was structured and I was compassionate. When you have those two, you do pretty well. But if you kind of get outside of that, you're a mess, and so are they. So Bobbie, please come in. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that Monique said just kind of hit me. And I wanted to say that trust is not something you want to start earning during a time of change. You have earned trust over the years, and you can't start now. You need to earn the trust over time so that when there is a time where people are scared, people are nervous, there are things happening around them, they will look to the places that they trust already.
Absolutely. And I think that's the mistake a lot of people, well, not what you just said, but the mistake that a lot of people make is they think that they're supposed to have trust right away. And you actually have to earn trust, right? You want to show up. And also when I do networking, I run a couple of networking events locally. And I always tell people that I liken networking to dating. We're not going to get married on the first night. Right. I usually use the other phrase, we're not going to go to bed with each other on the first night, but a lot of people apparently do. So, like I'm just going to do the whole marriage thing. And so when we're talking about leaders, just because you got that promotion doesn't mean everyone's going to trust you right away. You have to do the work. But it starts with us. Do you trust yourself to be the leader that you have been promoted to be? Do you trust yourself to take care of yourself so that you show up going this way as opposed to all over the place and sideways? Right? Yeah. So great conversation. Thank you both. Really, really fabulous. I want to just remind everybody that we are going to be seeing each other again January 12th. The topic is the hidden partnership. Why Challenge and Joy Need Each Other. I have panelists Joe Sagona and Gabriella Holt. Really looking forward to that conversation as well. And what I'd like to do is close out with, and I should have told you all this beforehand, but we were kind of running a little late. I would love for you to give us a quick nugget that you heard from any one of us. If you heard it from yourself, I'd like you to try to think if you really remember it from somebody else, but that's okay. So let's just take a quick moment to share golden nuggets, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell the audience who you are, how they can reach you, and why. Why would they reach you? What would they be looking for? So, Bobbie, come on in.
Yeah, I can't get over the Brene Brown, like, what percentage am I at? Like, that is like, ooh, that's good, and I'm adopting it. Going
All right.
forward, I'm adopting it. And I think the easiest way to send people to me is I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. Just mention Misha's show and also innovationwomen.com. You're all invited to Speaker Friend Friday. It's open to anybody. Thanks.
Fabulous. Thank you, Bobbie. And Monique?
Yeah, so I already mentioned the Olympic example is really standing out. So I'll introduce another. Misha, you were talking about essentially identifying who you are as a leader when you get promoted into these roles, and really identifying what is it that you care about, how are you going to lead, how are you going to build trust. I think that's something to really take away here, because when we think about supporting teams through change, oftentimes we see change as a single event and not something that is just ongoing that we need to navigate all the time. And so I think that really resonated with me in terms of that kind of pause to figure out, like, how do you want to lead in times of change? How do you want to lead in times of steady waters? And then if I think about the work that I do, so I didn't when I did the initial introduction. So my company is called Horizon Advisory Group. We facilitate leadership teams and then work with individual leaders to really help them to manage their relationship with change. And then what that looks like could be in terms of building out a strategic roadmap for how we're going to navigate it, or is developing a one-on-one coaching relationship, but really just sitting at the intersection of strategy, facilitation, and leadership development. And so with that leadership identity about, how do we want to lead? I really think that's critical in terms of supporting teams through change and recognizing that different roles require different identities and skill sets. And so it's not just one time to ask that question. It's often throughout the years, what does my team need from me and what am I willing to give?
Yeah, yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both. So as mentioned, y'all can connect with Monique and Bobbie on LinkedIn or go to their websites. All their information is on their LinkedIn profiles. And again, I'm Misha Safran. My company is the Center for Empathy and Emotional Intelligence. And I also have, and so I actually, if you want to schedule time with me, you can use that QR code. But I also have a special that I just want to announce. I don't usually do this on all the panels, but I've got a holiday special for people who want to turn their success into the best thing you've ever had, but to cultivate your success through joy and rest. And if you use the QR code and click on it now, you'll get $400 off. It is an online course, 21-day reset for joy and rest. And the code is success now. Now, here's the key. You want to cultivate your success through joy and rest without guilt. And that's what this is going to help you do. So you can scan the QR code or reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll get you the link. And I'm looking forward again to our next talk, which will be on January 12th, the hidden partnership, why challenge and joy need each other. I look forward to seeing everybody in the new year. Monique, Bobbie, I wish you peace, good health, healthy love, and lots of joy. And thank you for joining me today. Take good care, everybody.